The pain messes with my feeling. Something such. Birth. Loss of mercy. Candid. Thing. Refuge me.
No fucking Discord did that. I knew it broke my goddamn camera. 1 second. I am all purpled. Hello, everyone. Hope all of you are well. Welcome to our ongoing reading. I don't know how many times we're going to do this. I think one time. It's going to be a one-time reading. I think a one-time reading is going to be it. We're going to be doing a one-time reading of Vicious Circle. Maybe two. Who knows? But we are reading...
Hello, Brooks.
Hey, how you doing? How's things, Marcel?
I'm very excited to read with all of you.
I'm glad. We are live on the YouTube, just letting you know. That's why we're in the live room. But it's good to have you. I'm excited to read because we're finishing chapter 1, moving into chapter 2, and I think it's going to be... this book very quickly gets to what I think are like the exciting parts. Like, again, his reading of all of this stuff is very fascinating. As we make our way through how Klossowski is reading Nietzsche, it's going to be really important to remember this is Klossowski reading Nietzsche for the structure of Nietzsche. It's a very unique thing Klossowski's reading's doing. And we went through it in the first live stream on this, where we talked through his intro and how he talks about this book. Because how he wrote is, and how he read, is he didn't read Nietzsche alongside a whole bunch of secondary sources. What he did instead is he read Nietzsche presuming that Nietzsche believes the stuff Nietzsche's writing about experience and life, and as such, presuming that the construction of the writing is exemplary of the things that he's getting across. Presuming basically that the structure makes the words. It's a Klossowski thing. This is a very deep thing for him in a lot of his other writings. If you read Resemblance and a handful of other pieces of his, it really does get it across. So it's really fun to listen to and read and hear how he's going through it. So I'm jazzed for that today. That's going to be fun. And beyond that, I think that's like my primary thrust today. Did anyone have any thoughts after last week before we jump forward, or is everyone kind of ready to do it? I'm assuming that means everyone's down with whatever. So we will get to the reading and we will make our way through it. As always, super chats are appreciated, memberships appreciated. If you want to join live and ask questions or correct me, I cannot tell you how valuable that is and how much I love it. You are free to do so. Discord.gg/DGQC if you enjoy just sitting back and doing nothing. You can also support by going over to Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. Let's get to the reading. There. This is where you can see my mark on the page. It says 3 because this is our third reading. I have a very good note system that I have refined over years. 3 means third. To give men back the courage of their natural drives, to check their self-underestimation, not that of man as an individual, but that of man as nature. To remove antitheses from things after comprehending that we have projected them there. To remove the idiosyncrasies of society from existence, guilt, punishment, justice, honesty, freedom, love, etc. This is Nietzsche. Thus Nietzsche, in turn, undertook his own combat against culture in the name of a culture of the affects, which would be built on the ruins of the hypostases of consciousness and its antinomies, insofar as they are born from the guilt of consciousness toward itself, which will propel it toward the totality of spirit. This culture of affects will be possible only after a progressive dislocation of the substructures that are elaborated in language. Toward the middle of the years 1888, Nietzsche retraced the stages of his own moral itinerary in a concise manner. That fly is back again. What the fuck? How long have I already sought to prove myself the perfect innocence of becoming? How many singular paths has this already taken me down? At first, it seemed to me that the just solution was simply to decree existence as something similar to art does not fall under the jurisdiction of morality. Furthermore, morality itself belongs to the domain of phenomena. Next, I said to myself, every concept of guilt is objectively devoid of value, but subjectively, every life is necessarily unjust and illogical. Finally, the third time, I took on myself the negation of any aim from the fact of experiencing the unknowability of any causal chain. And why all this? Was it not in order to procure for myself the feeling of total responsibility? To situate myself outside all praise and all blame, completely independent of yesterday and today, in order to pursue my own aim in my own manner? Nietzsche, Klossowski Nietzsche. That's the order of this little bit here. This is, there's a lot said here. There's a lot said here. You can probably guess there's a lot said here, but there's a lot said here. A huge amount, actually. Let me open Discord chat to make sure I'm not missing anything there. I don't want to miss you. People talk a lot. It's good. All right. Mostly we're going to be opening from, I believe this is beyond, parts of Beyond Good and Evil. There's a handful of extra bits in here that he's going through. But these things are pulled through. So Nietzsche opens up, to give men back the courage of their natural drives, to check their self-underestimation, not that of man as an individual, but that of man as nature. The point for Nietzsche of a lot of his work, and again, this is towards the middle-late period, so he's got a lot more clarity around what he's doing in his sort of larger magnum opus of sorts, is very much talking about the response, the reply to the Christian. Did I draw a dick to bookmark it? It kind of looks like a dick, doesn't it? It's the number 3. It does kind of look like a dick. God damn it. Sorry. You're right. I've got to get rid of that now. God damn it. It looks like a dick. Why did I do that? What the fuck, Brooks? You fucking moron. Please go ahead.
In 1880, when the Franco-Prussian War happened, at that time when Nietzsche commented on this, I think the Franco-Russian War happened, and I think there is a corollary because at that time, like, Nietzsche joined the Franco-Prussian War, and one of the things that, like, a pinnacle for Nietzsche's life, right, or Nietzsche's transformation is the Franco-Prussian War, right? Because I understand from this line, to check their self underestimation is not of man as an individual, but man as nature, and to remove the antithesis from things after comprehension that we projected them there to remove the idiosyncrasy of society from existence, guilt, punishment, justice, honesty, and freedom, right? I don't know, it's far-fetched, but my comment in this, what I understand from it, is that he's kind of critiquing some kind of like a abstract virtue that, like, Hegel at the end of Philosophy of Right, saying that, like, courage becomes kind of like an abstract, right? When it become abstract, when the invention of the gun, right? Because he said, like, in anthropological manner, excuse my language, he said, like, courage, it disappeared and vanished, and with the vanish of courage, it become abstract. It become not courage, right? For the military, what Hegel called the military class, right, or the guardian class, if you use Platonic language, right? The guardian class that defends the bourgeois instrument, right?
But this is the as I'm reading, and again, it's interesting. As I'm reading it, this is more one. I can see that there's Hegel in here. I'm seeing more Kant shitting personally. I personally am seeing more Kant shitting in this paragraph. But he's opening up just to sort of be light. The way he opens up and he's talking about man as individual, not that of man as individual, that of man as nature. is removing the anthropocentrism that is sort of built into especially his culture that he was going through, but Christianity or post-Enlightenment thinking or this individualist sort of move. The next line, to remove the antitheses from things after comprehending we have projected them. All of this, remove idiosyncrasies of society, and these other things. The phrasing, and it's the thing I like that Klossowski says, is that Nietzsche, as in turn, undertook his own combat against culture in the name of a culture of affects, which would be built on the ruins of the hypostasies of consciousness and its antinomies. This is, to me, critique that's going after absolutely like German idealism, but Cartesian dualism. The Kantian antinomies and the broader contradictions that consciousness as a concept, or this individualist conception of it, the I think therefore I am shit, when consciousness turns on itself, again, which is the thrust of what we've been talking about, guilt, punishment, justice, honesty, freedom, love, these things that happen as consciousness sort of resentment builds, as the force of things turn upon themselves. This is where the critique comes from. This is the idea of these things being substantial entities in and of themselves. And by being substantial entities, they're awarded an agency. They're awarded a singular. They're awarded as I think he would phrase it, they're awarded a thing that is self-underestimation. That we are not man as individual, but man is a force. And we are a force. I am a force. Forces that are playing through us. And that's the phrasing I think he's aiming more at specifically. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense in terms of culture, right?
I don't know what you said.
Maybe underestimate like a lot.
Am I alone?
Yeah,
you're turning into a robot.
I mean,
No, you're turning into a robot. I can't like your microphone's going all funky. For me, I don't know if it's everyone, but for me it's I literally didn't like I understand words you're saying, but the problem is like the sound isn't cohering into a word. It's not that I don't understand when you talk. So there's a couple kinds of understanding. We're at the one that matters, I think, most, which is I don't think anyone heard the words you used there. I think you said Kant, but I couldn't tell. Did we lose Marcellus? No, we didn't. He's trying to figure it out.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Welcome.
Yeah. Maybe this maybe I kind of missed the mark in terms of this section, right?
Ooh,
and
okay.
maybe I'm kind of missed the mark, right?
Okay.
So maybe it's
I'm gonna think you
talking about
didn't.
some other forces. Maybe I don't know. But like let's proceed reading because it's kind of like this section is kind of like maybe alluding Pierre Klossowski, maybe he's alluding to this section or reference it again, right, in the second kind of chapter, maybe. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, we'll continue a little bit because we do have more to read. And then before we move on, let's make sure we talk about the section. We'll do that. So we'll stop at the end of this. Don't worry. We're not going to just charge straight through. Because the culture of affects is going to be important really quick here. Really quick here. Also, you're much more clear. What the fuck, man? Where'd this fly come from? Why does he like my nose? What the fuck, man? All right. Where did I leave off? Propel it towards the totality of spirit. Again, Hegel, Kant, he is shitting on everyone. He is shitting on everyone here in a lot of this. Let's move back slightly. Thus Nietzsche, in turn, undertook his own combat against culture, in the name of a culture of the affects, which will be built on the ruins of the hypostases of consciousness and its antinomies, insofar as they are born from the guilt of consciousness towards itself, which will propel it toward the totality of spirit. There's a lot said here. The culture of affects is going to come back a lot. It does for Nietzsche as well. One sec. It's going to make me insane. Culture of affects is going to be a big deal. What this is kind of doing is this is a shift away from the hypostases of consciousness, the alternative to a consciousness-based culture, individualist-based culture, a subject-based culture, a cogito-based culture, a spirit-based culture. The idea that these things, again, are substantial entities. And this is, again, I am agreeing, it is targeting traditional German idealism, Kant, Hegel, all that, and also Cartesian dualism. It's fucking with all of this. And the antinomies line is specifically at, I read it, specifically at Kant, and then totality of spirit is basically Hegel. That's Klossowski's bringing these in. The thing he's doing and playing through is it's diagnostically linking and playing with the idea of how consciousness, guilt, and the structure of linguistics itself. Again, remember, Nietzsche is a philologist. We went through this. We spent time on it for a reason. He's a philologist. Their job is always to sort of play in the nature of how linguistics does things, or how language works, or how the spoken word or written word affects people. And that's all of this is kind of becomes this mutually reinforcing system overall. And this is where they move into the next bit. The culture of affects is possible only after a progressive dislocation of the substructures elaborated in language. This is the dissolution. It's not a direct refutation of it, but it's a dissolution of these things that he was just going through and sort of talking through as a setup. And as we got to Beyond Good and Evil, which is what he's talking about here, towards the middle years of 80 to 88, Nietzsche retraced the stages of his own moral itinerary in a concise manner. This is Beyond Good and Evil, Genealogy of Morals, and ultimately the Antichrist, which is fucking really good, by the way. And all of this was sort of pushing towards this last little bit, where he sort of is revisiting this. How long have I already sought to prove myself the perfect innocence of becoming? Nietzsche's talking ultimately about himself here. This is his screaming against the idea of this moral interpretation of existence. The path he goes down first is his first path. He's very self-aware in a lot of what he writes. And he's referring to, his early works, which were, Schopenhauer-y, you could say. They were very much down that line. Wagner, where art is a sphere beyond morality, which is what he's talking about here. Birth of Tragedy, early 70s, as a thing. And then he says,
Romanticism.
Yeah, it's his deeply romantic. But again, interesting. If you know how to read it, it's very interesting. But it's where you can see where he could have gone Nazi. Like, it's not hard to sort of see the hyper idealism. But even then, he's contradicting himself and playing with it and doing interesting stuff that, again, he immediately takes on and moves. And that's the next thing he says, literally, like, next I say to myself, like he's telling the story. Next I said to myself, every concept of guilt is objectively devoid of value, but subjectively, every life is necessarily unjust and illogical. And the third time, I take on myself the negation of any aim from the fact of experiencing the unknowability of any causal chain. He's talking about his own growth here, and it's fucking awesome, as far as I'm concerned. So the second phase is this positivist skeptical period, where he starts becoming more aware or stating and arguing that moral categories are necessarily perspectival. We went through a few of these. I mean, even last night we went through a few of these, because these things can be perspectival, but also have a psychological reality, consistency amongst themselves. The third phase is where he becomes far more radical, and his epistemic skepticism comes out extraordinarily. I think gay science goes through this. You see this really heavily in a ton of his stuff, but its causation is being thrown out. He no longer really understands it. In his critique of mechanistic determinism or destiny is out in full force. He's embracing chaos and the void fully, and the fundamental reality of all of it. And that's kind of where he ends. Why all this? Was it not in order to procure for myself the feeling of total irresponsibility, to situate myself outside of praise and all blame, completely independent of yesterday and today, in order to pursue my own aim in my own manner? This is, again, he's talking about himself here, and it's extremely vulnerable writing. As I read it, I read this as extremely vulnerable writing. It is basically him saying, the Übermensch, which is this idea of exonerating himself of total irresponsibility, one who creates values rather than inheriting it as an Übermensch. The temporal independence he exists and has, like he's out loud talking about what these things are for, why he did these, what is the point of this, and he's adding doubt to it in a really, I think, for me, interesting way. And it's that what Klossowski's bringing here is showing that Nietzsche is, and we're going to be getting into this in the next chapter, but what is Nietzsche trying to say? Not really the point yet. Notice what is happening and the structure of it. Nietzsche, in just these passages we read today, but in the rest of it, is talking about himself and returning to his own conception of his own ideas, critiquing them and layering, then writing more, then going back. Literally, you see that in this passage, right? The third time I took on the negation of any aim. But why? Why all this? He goes back, recognizes himself, and then moves forward. Back, recognizes himself, moves forward. There's a movement in all of these writings, in all of Nietzsche, that is this pattern. And it's a structure that you can start to recognize as you make your way through. It's a really fascinating thing when you start talking about it. That's what's happening. And that's what Klossowski, very simply, we can spend time analyzing this. That would be better if it was a Nietzsche thing. We're reading this book, and this book is very specific. Notice, Klossowski introduces it. Nietzsche retraced the stages of his own moral itinerary in a concise manner. That's what we're supposed to notice. He retraced the stages of his own moral itinerary. He was self-reflexive. He evaluated himself, talked about it, evaluated himself, talked about it. You see this over and over, even in this early part here, Klossowski's immediate comments. Thus Nietzsche in turn undertook his own combat against culture in the name of the culture of affects, built on the ruins of hypostases, blah, blah, blah. This culture of affects will be possible only after a progressive distillation of the substructures elaborated in language. There's a process happening here Klossowski's wanting us to be deeply aware of. That's the thrust of this. This is a fruit fly, and I don't know why I have one in here. I don't have fruit in here, and I don't have anything rotting in here. What the fuck? Why is he on my glasses?
In Human All Too Human, right, we see Nietzsche undertaking a comeback against the culture. But which culture? The cultural critic, the French cultural critic in his time, in Human All Too Human, right? This is kind of like, if I situate that sentence, I situated it in Human All Too Human, right? When he take this kind of battle
I
or
believe,
make him sneer. Yeah.
I believe so. But again, we're not necessarily really trying to go back to, like, what did Nietzsche mean by this? We're following Klossowski's journey through it. It's the same fruit fly, Estelle. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, trying to understand Nietzsche's method and how he's undertaking this journey.
The structure of the journey.
Summit.
The structure of the journey explicitly. And it's, to go back a little bit earlier, one sec. But in Nietzsche's mind, these methods amounted to a reproduction of the very conditions that have formed and favored his vision of the world, and which therefore had given his type of feeling and thinking a chance of success. We're doing a meta-analysis of Nietzsche, not so much going into what did Nietzsche mean, but more how did Nietzsche go about it, and what do you continually see? What do we continually see? Well, we continually see that he simply want to transmit the states of his own soul in order to make sure others would have the means of reacting and acting under the worst conditions, thereby enabling them not only to defend themselves, but also to counterattack? Klossowski reads Nietzsche as doing something far more radical than just writing philosophy. What Nietzsche's doing, as Klossowski's reading it, is that these are actually the states of his soul being transmitted in writing, so that way when others read it, they have the means to react and then counterattack to defend themselves. It's extremely different reading. It's an extremely different reading of Nietzsche, but it's kind of a huge deal. And again, we can go through and we can have discussions at length about Nietzsche. That's fine. It's not really the point for this. The way that he's going about this, I want to make sure we go back fully because we're going to move to the second bit. Boop, 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 boop. Let us say we have written a false study. Because we are reading Nietzsche's text directly, because we are listening to him speak, can we perhaps make him speak to us? Can we ourselves make use of the whisperings, the breathings, bursts of anger and laughter, and what may be the most ingratiating and most irritating prose yet written in German language? For those who can hear it, the word of Nietzsche gains a power that is all the more explosive, insofar as contemporary history, current events, and the universe are beginning to answer, in a more or less circuitous manner, the questions Nietzsche was asking some 80 years ago. Nietzsche was interrogating the near and distant future, a future that has now become our reality. He predicted that this future would be convulsive, to the point where our own convulsions are characters of his thought. We will try to comprehend how and in what sense Nietzsche's interrogation describes what we are now living through. It's a very different reading. It's a very different type of reading. It's what's going to make it interesting. But again, I'm okay to have discussions about Nietzsche, but I want to be clear, at this reading is going to be a very different type of thing where we're less talking about what he means. Because what Nietzsche means isn't going to be a thing Klossowski's going for a lot. That's how this is how I've read this book. Made it through a couple times. I've read secondary sources. I've watched interviews with and lectures by people who did the translation, other people who've done this. This seems to be the general understanding, is Klossowski's not trying to get at what like Nietzsche meant, but instead what Nietzsche's doing. Which is a very... I'm actually not sure I've read a text that does it like this.
Because Deleuze, he's in philosophy. Deleuze doesn't want like what there, but what we are doing, right? It's not what there. Philosophy is not, for Deleuze, is not about what is there, but what we doing, right? Or what things doing.
It's the idea for Deleuze, and again, he gets a lot of this from his discussions. He and Klossowski were very close. The way Deleuze talks about it, I think that is very useful here, is to consider the image of thought. Thought isn't something, we're not just thinking all the time, or we don't just have random thoughts. Thought is something that is evoked by the world, the same way that sensation is invoked by the world. The way that you touch something cold is the way that you think something funny. That stuff doesn't happen without that interaction. That stuff doesn't happen without that interaction. All thought necessarily then works mechanistically, and it's very much the same way that touching a stove produces heat. We can talk through, and I think I would hope we generally agree. You touch something hot, it's the excitement of molecules, it gets overdone, the nerve endings experience this destruction or death of themselves as they move too fast because of heat death, and that pain then goes to your brain, which your brain reacts. Like, we have some level of understanding of kind of these processes, but that constellation of things that are happening, that machine doesn't mean anything. We say it means that the pan is hot, or that means that you're burning yourself, but all of that is its own thing. We pull the meaning out to close it down into a single event, or to flatten it into a single thing to make it quickly explanatory. Very easy. Great, we have that. But with thought, we do the same thing. Oh, that means that he's saying X, Y, and Z. Therefore, I don't have to worry about the rest of the ways that things are interacting or how my thought responded to it in a mass of complex sort of responses. But that's actually how thought works. Thought is multifaceted and complex and kind of a whole thing. And what's produced out of this, the interaction, isn't a single thing, but instead the image of thought itself. And so as you get to all of these things, how does it operate? How does it work? It's not about what Nietzsche's meaning. It's about how we interact with it. It's about how the image of thought is shifting as you're reading, as we're taking it in, or even as Nietzsche's writing it, which is basically Klossowski's point at the end of this last section. Let's go find it. Because Nietzsche's here retracing the stages of his own moral itinerary, and it's a beautiful paragraph, but we're supposed to be, because it ends on that. That's the end. We're in the next chapter immediately, because that's the point. We're supposed to be seeing it as Nietzsche explaining his experience as concisely as possible, so that way others can be armed. Assuming, technically, you never touch anything. Right. But still, we have the complex reality that we crush down into a single resemblance of it, a word, a representation. And we do this with thought. Oh, the movie, I don't know, pick a fucking movie. Superman is about man's fragility in the universe. That's what it means. It means that we all know we're fragile. That's collapsing the movie into a single thing, collapsing all of it. We love doing this. Instead, Klossowski's method is to actually live with it and experience it as a lived thing growing and as a machine that's continually rebuilding. And that's the part that I think is pretty fucking interesting. Don't look at it in such an atomistic way. Well, it's a simple explanation. It's about the emergent properties and interactions between things. And not even between two things, between all of the partial objects of things. By me just saying pan in hand, I've already crushed things. Yes, this is not Anti-Oedipus's reading. I'm trying to keep it light for Klossowski here. Is Klossowski a good scholar of Nietzsche? No, I would say probably not, but Klossowski's doing his own thing. And so if you want to go learn about Nietzsche, there are a lot of much better people who will give you a bibliography. Everything in it, I think, is exceptional, but the point is not a bibliography or a scholarship on Nietzsche. It's instead, how do we build something out of what Nietzsche's done in a different way? It is a very intimate way of seeing it. Yeah, Rod, that's how I would put it. It's, take Nietzsche at his word, these are his thoughts, is structural to seeing this as passionate from the soul projection from Nietzsche to us. Yes. It is a machinic constructivism. Yes. It's a really interesting setup. So it's analyzing the process of someone who's writing a diary. It's analyzing the process of someone who's aware of what they're writing, not that they're writing a diary. If these were private notes never intended, I think we'd probably take them very differently. But this is, and Nietzsche writes about this. This is explicitly like he's writing this as part of a battle. He's writing this as part of a goal for change. He's very much doing something interesting with it. So, yeah. Is he giving political theory from Nietzsche? No, we're not going to be getting to political theory. This is about the vicious circle and probably the most interesting reading of the eternal return that exists. So, unless there's a question on that last ending, though, which I'm down for there to be, we're going to read the next bit so we can start moving forward, because this is going to be where we get into Nietzsche's Correspondence a little bit, which is a little drier. I'm not going to have to spend a lot of time explaining things. This is take the words like it's a story from here, because this is kind of this is the biography portion of all of it. Do I think the idea of superheroes is anti-leftist? Ask me again in a different stream. The euphoria that gripped Nietzsche after each of his crises from 1877 to 1881 led him to scrutinize ever more carefully the forces that had been revealed through the disturbances of his organism. He gave them free rein, during which time he returned to his notebooks and submitted them to his vocabulary. A series was thereby formed, a group of reflections on certain aspects of history, on certain arguments of scientists or thinkers or artists, or on certain gestures of politicians, all of which, depending on the diverse level they represented, seemed to bear witness, actively or passively, to the same forces that had just given Nietzsche's brain, his organism, a short respite. The anger, tenderness, impatience, or calm he experienced, in the context of certain motives and circumstances, were already sanctioned by received terms. Yet the afflux or reflux of these forces, their tension or relaxation, could find an apparent outlet only by being translated into words, images, reasonings, or refutations. For a moment arrived when they would again become muddled, intermingling and obscuring each other. They had been diverted, they had deviated far from an aim, and neither history nor science nor investigation, nor even the forms of art converged upon this aim. The writing stopped, the words were effaced, and a new and terrifying aggression exerted itself on Nietzsche's brain. If you can't see how Klossowski's going through this, you can see how he's building and how he's talking about what Nietzsche's done, from the internal struggles to the writing, the impulses driving him. And you can kind of see that as you make your way through. This whole thing is really building towards this specific point in time. This is human all too human through daybreak. I call it daybreak, dawn, which is when he's made his movement away from the Schopenhauer, Wagnerian shit towards what I would say is more mature philosophy, or more interesting, non-romantic philosophy. The phrase that he's opening with here, there's a euphoria that gripped Nietzsche after each of his crises from 77 to 81. This is how Nietzsche wrote about it too. This is using a lot of his correspondence and his sort of notes and personal writing. But this is this sort of odd relationship between breakdown and breakthrough that Nietzsche was going through, and he wrote about. There's continuous, again, back and forth, where these disturbances existed for him almost pathologically, and they ended up becoming productive things themselves. The use of force throughout this, and you'll see there's a very specific use of afflux or reflux of these forces. Thank you, Daniel Smith, dear Lord. Not the flows of these forces, the afflux or reflux of these forces. It's a bursting forth. Afflux, reflux. These are explosions. Afflux, reflux. These are particular terms around all this that is about metaphysics of forces. Again, well, the use of organism for Nietzsche here throughout all of this is sort of a way of talking about him somatically, not symptomatically, somatically, that he's a bodily processes, basically, rather than just a mental activity. This is not about his thought. It's about the afflux and reflux of forces somatically. And then as you get to the next little part, there's an odd play. I think it's worth going over. He gave them free rein, during which he returned to his notebooks, submitted them to his vocabulary. Series was formed, a group of reflections on certain aspects of history, on certain arguments of scientists or thinkers or artists, on certain gestures of politicians. Gave them free rein is one of the things that stuck out to me for this one. There's a passivity Nietzsche is not commonly seen to have. This stuck out to me. Maybe it's just me. Maybe a lot of people read Nietzsche and they're like, oh, he gives the forces free rein. I don't see that a lot actually in his writing as he talks about these things. But it's an interesting phrasing because it does kind of match Nietzsche going again through this, the way he submits his vocabulary, right? The phrasing of this puts Nietzsche in a very different non-active position for some of this, that I found the phrasing very interesting for Klossowski to use. Maybe it's just me. Klossowski is very intentional with his writing. Dan Smith, very intentional with the translation. The idea that this starts talking about Nietzsche sort of being the recipient. And again, they say the anger, tenderness, impatience, calm, the motives, circumstances, the already sanctioned, the phrasing he's got around a lot of this, I found very interesting because it's kind of this, I don't know how else to put it. He's accepting them. He's finding places for them. He's submitting. The terminology is very unique when it comes to talking about Nietzsche's process. He seems to be in talks about, and people talk about him. Jordan Peterson yesterday talks about him philosophizing with a hammer, smashing things. People have that image of Nietzsche. But when you read him, I think it's fair to say there are times where it is a passive recipient he's talking about. It's a passivity that allows the unconscious forces to guide his inquiry rather than an imposed systematic method. It's a really interesting note for me that the way that Klossowski uses this language. It's going to come back, but this is the first place I see it. And Klossowski very much pulls from this as they go. At least, again, as I read it. It's just very interesting. It's a counter to, I think, a lot of discussions of Nietzsche. So I wanted to make sure I made a note of it and brought it up. Does that sound stupid? Is that fair? Am I overthinking it, which is possible? Nietzsche being bottom for his brain. Maybe he's a power bottom for his brain.
I sort of read it as him sort of trying to like both receive, but also then sort of take note of where the forces are going, where how all of it's happening, right?
Yeah, it's an active passivity, which doesn't make sense when I say it out loud, but it did in my brain before.
No,
I
yeah,
said
that's. I think that's right. Yeah, as silly as it sounds.
It is. It sounds very stupid, but it is.
No, it's just a like weird part of English, right? We don't have the right words for what you're trying to describe, but active passivity is very much like a
way
concept to Taoism.
Way, possibly like
Yeah.
action through inaction. Yeah.
Yeah, but not, that's not exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to like completely disrupt the entire conversation into like just talking about Taoism, but there's this idea that I think is best translated as acuity, but it's usually translated as like reflection or stillness. But like in the Taoist practice, reflection isn't like a passive activity. Like if you're reflecting your material conditions, it's not like a fucking mirror, right? It's like how the surface of water reflects something, it changes it as it's reflected. It's like an active kind of reflecting.
No, it is. It's the next little bit here has the line the anger, tenderness, impatience, or calming experience in the context of certain motives or circumstances were already sanctioned by received terms. There's the thing he's talking about had just given Nietzsche's brain, his organism, a short respite. Nietzsche's affective hermeneutics, which is a complicated Oh, we are getting a lot of feedback from someone. We're going to server mute you for the time being. His affective hermeneutics, how he reads cultural texts, he does it through their emotional signatures, and it's played that way. He doesn't really spend time on the logical parts of it, but more the received affect that's sort of coming through, and that thing that, again, and we are going to see this repeated. Klossowski is really hammering home. Nietzsche is constantly going through this, talking about this active and then sitting back watching, then doing, sitting back watching, doing. There's a constant process to this that is very fascinating. Oh, you're good, Rhizomatic. You're super muted. Ping if you want to be unmuted. We just can't have a lot of background noise. So the setup that they're playing with here is really, again, as I'm reading it, and I am biased, but I went, oh yeah. And it feels like it's not a common description of Nietzsche, but it does fit a lot of it. And then again, this is the next little bit continues that. The afflex or reflux of these forces, their tension, relaxation, could find an apparent outlet only in being translated into words, images, reasonings, or refutations. For a moment arrived when they would again become muddled. A moment arrived where they would again become muddled, intermingling and obscuring each other. They had been diverted. They had been diverted far from an aim. If there's a fucking set of sentences, I can tell you that this summarize this entire book. This is the thing. Forces operate for Nietzsche, but also for Klossowski, as dynamic principles. These are not out of logical necessity or secondary things. This is the whole point for him, is that we have this really fucked up mediation between the way that preconceptual, pre-thought, pre-individual, unconscious, whatever, preconceptual forces and linguistic expression works. And specifically translating these things, could find an apparent outlet only by being translated into words, images, reasoning, and refutation. Translation here is used very interesting. This is necessarily going to have loss and distortion. They're going to do that. For a moment arrived when they would again become muddled. Despite being translated into that, there's another moment that comes where again these things are muddled, and he had to deal with it again. They had been diverted from the aim. They'd been shifted. The linguistic expression betrays the directness of the impulses behind it. This is just a thing to just remember. I'm not going to go into it too deep. Just, it comes back again, and now they're off kilter. Oh, off kilter. This almost circular kind of behavior. And neither history nor science nor investigation nor even the forms of art converged upon this aim. The writing stopped, the words were effaced, and a new and terrifying aggression exerted itself on Nietzsche's brain. I really, really like how Klossowski talks about Nietzsche, by the way, if you can't tell. But the way that cultural forms, they had been diverted far from an aim. Neither history nor science nor investigation nor even forms of art converged upon this aim. The way that cultural institutions naturally are inadequate in every single way when it comes to sort of how things get expressed culturally, how they can't express the forces that Nietzsche's words seem to contain or are able to come through. The cyclical breakdown of Nietzsche's creative periods, the continuing recurrence of them at an extreme level, which we do experience when you're reading, but you also know, if you don't know, he did have this happen constantly. This violent return of these unprocessed forces hit when symbolic mediation fails. This process, this is what is attracting Klossowski to this reading. What is driving this reading is that. Is everyone following? Because we're going to get into some Other stuff I'm mostly going to be talking through. This is a little lighter. That opening is the big deal. He's setting the tone for this. The third section, which we may get to, because this goes quick. This is a lot of just sort of biographical stuff. Some of it's going to be Nietzsche's writing, and we'll be just making our way through. But it's going to be, I think, fucking interesting. It may seem absurd to read Nietzsche's successive texts as so many migraines inverted in words. I just really like that phrasing. Reading his later texts as migraines inverted in words. Given the way Nietzsche was compelled to describe the various phases of his conscious states, however, he was unable to avoid the mechanism of such an inversion. What if Nietzsche was right? I'm just kind of adding a little bit, but Nietzsche did not believe words or thought or anything existed outside of the somatic experience of experience. The bodily things are bodily, forces are forces. We are an expression of it. So why would Nietzsche as a whole not be an expression of these forces in time as they go up or down or reflect in various ways, and one is an inversion of the other? That's the thing. It's not so much talking about his works as being like, oh, Nietzsche wrote this. It's like, no, there's more like a psychosomatic hermeneutics coming through here. A very Nietzschean style reading of Nietzsche almost is, I think, Klossowski's argument. The physical pain that Nietzsche experienced being transformed into linguistic creation. Again, it's not saying he took that and turned it into this, but that turned into that. That this is the cycle, this is the setup, the mechanisms at play here. Philosophical insights emerge not despite suffering. He didn't have a bolt of lightning hit him despite the suffering, but precisely because of it and the metamorphosis between states. The phrasing he uses, it compelled to describe the various phases of his conscious states, is how Klossowski's reading all of Nietzsche. That he had this inner turmoil, inner experience, these fraught pains and psychological pains and horrors and all of this. And these things compelled him to do this. That there is a necessity out of those things that kind of came into why he wrote. Nietzsche didn't choose to write it. Nietzsche would refute the idea that he chose to write any of these things. That'd be stupid. That's free will. That's silly. Instead, these things come out of a physiological compulsion due to the illnesses. It's a very radical reading, as you can tell. And let's keep going. For a long period of time, and well before the positivist critique of human, all too human, Nietzsche had dismissed the intelligible in itself. Yet he could neither attack it in consciousness nor speak in the name of the unspoken. This is why he remained dependent for so long on the problems of culture posed by his vision of Greek tragedy. The birth of tragedy out of the spirit of music had served merely to make explicit, in a prestigious manner, the Hellenizing aspect of his secret phantasm, the search for a culture that would accord with the forces of the unspoken. He would use this phantasm to protect himself from the forces of inertia as much as he would use it to influence other minds with all the ambiguity such a project implies. So this is the first use of this right here. We're going to go right back to here. I know. This is the opening. This is Dan Smith's notes. We didn't read this because you shouldn't just read the notes and then presume everyone's going to remember everything. Phantasm and simulacrum are perhaps the most important terms in Klossowski's vocabulary. The former, phantasm, comes from the Greek phantasia, the appearance, the imagination. The imagination, that's a fucking shitty scan, was taken up in a more technical sense in psychoanalytic theory. The latter comes from the Latin simulare, to copy, to represent, to feign. during the late Roman Empire referred to statues of gods that lined the entrance to a city. They were simulacra. They were feigned copies of the gods. Obviously, these statues didn't have god powers. In Klossowski, the term phantasm refers to an obsessional image produced instinctively from the life of impulses. My true themes, writes Klossowski of himself, are dictated by one or more obsessional instincts that seek to express themselves. A simulacra, by contrast, is a willed representation, willed reproduction of a phantasm in a literary, pictorial, or plastic form that simulates this invisible agitation of the soul. The simulacrum, in its imitative sense, is the actualization of something in itself, incommunicable and non-representable. The phantasm, in its obsessional constraint. If Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle is primarily an interpretation of Nietzsche's physiognomy, it is because it attempts to identify the impulses or powers that exercised their constraint on Nietzsche, the phantasms they produced, and the simulacra Nietzsche created to express them. Phantasm is involuntarily psychosomatic imagery collection of things. Imago. Simulacra is what Nietzsche produced to express that. Very important, the difference between that. This is not the Baudrillardian simulacra. Very much. Secondarily, phantasm is not fantasy as a thing. The involuntarily created imago, the image within yourself, or the expressed phantasm of the impulses, and then they get turned into the simulacra, which are feigned copies of that thing that you used to express. For Klossowski, this is a very, very important distinction. Extremely important distinction. So when we say, and we're talking about the Hellensing aspect of his secret phantasm, it's a whole thing. You having trouble, Quat? You following along? Doing okay?
A quick question. Does this have any through lines to do with the stuff that gets mentioned in empiricism and subjectivity, with, in particular, like Hume's like fancy or fantasia?
It's very much, well, for Deleuze it is. Deleuze writes in Logic of Sense extensively about the phantasm, and in the, I think it's the Penguin edition, I can't remember which one, I think it's the Penguin edition, comes with a couple extra essays Deleuze wanted included, and one of them is on Klossowski's phantasm. Because for Deleuze, it operates slightly differently, but it's also an important setup, because when he's talking about, and throughout Anti-Oedipus, they use the ideas of the conception of the image conjured by desiring machines, or the image conjured by the process. That is the phantasm. They're talking very similarly, using different terms, so there are edges that are different. It is not, but these things are informing each other very deeply for Deleuze. Very much. Right.
And this also traces down to like Hume's concept of like the fancy, or am I incorrect there?
I'm not a Hume guy.
Okay.
So I would love to be able to answer that. I'm not a Hume guy, and I don't have, I mean, I've read Empiricism and Subjectivity a few times, but that specific question I'm not going to say I have a total answer for. That's a very interesting question to ask, though. Ben, I know you're here. Three, what the fuck are you doing? How are you not answering immediately upon me calling on you? This is Ben. Ben ran a empiricism subjectivity reading group for a little bit, and he's now not answering, which is fine.
I've been reading his suggestion, the John Roth guide to it recently. It's been very good.
Yeah, see, and he's also terrible at answering when you call on him, apparently. So I don't know, but the within this, the secret phantasm the setup that's playing. This is why he remained dependent for so long on the problems of culture posed by his vision of Greek tragedy. The birth of tragedy had served merely to make explicit in prestigious manner the Hellenizing aspect of his secret phantasm. Again, the phantasm is what is evoked directly from the forces within, and then you make out of simulacra. Simulacra is the thing you make with it. So the birth of tragedy, Nietzsche's vision of this and how it works, simulacra, the image that's conjured, the phantasm that's conjured is all of the forces, which is why there is a Hellenizing aspect of things. Because again, this is the thing. Nietzsche dismissed the intelligible in itself, yet he could neither attack it in consciousness nor speak in the name of the unspoken. That's why he remained so dependent for so long. He would use this phantasm to protect himself from the forces of inertia as much as he would use it to influence other minds with all the ambiguity such a project implies. This is, there's a lot here. The phantasm for Nietzsche here, as Klossowski's talking about it, and again, this is as I'm reading it, and I think it's a fairly clear paragraph. The phantasm is self-protection and influence at the same time. So you have this really complex psychology, psychosomatic sort of setup of Nietzsche's earliest projects. The way that his modern academia, the inertia, is the setup, the forces of inertia, the way that the deadening of his academic career and cultural institutions, against which the Greek ideal serves as an energizing countervision. This operant was big to Nietzsche. And again, the phantasm and then the simulacra. The phantasm is just evoked, and this gave him a thing to counteract the deadening of inertia, the heat death, the momentum of things that he was experiencing in academia, which, if you don't know the story of, he had a bad time, and his more radical or interesting ideas were definitely shit on. And so he had this other thing. So he had this piece he wrote that I think has been published since, The Greek State, which is worth reading just to be able to see what he's talking about here, because that's what he's directly referring to it, because I think it was called The Greek State, and it's about the Hellenic sort of period. And in it, Nietzsche defended slavery straight up as necessary for cultural achievement. He straight up defended slavery. I'm not going to mince words. It is fucking something to read. But that really upset everyone around him. Even Wagner, like Nazis, even fucking like Nazi heroes would be like, dude, no. So for him, there was this really weird way he was doing this cultural movement and how it was happening and how he was reacting and how the phantasm came to play with this. And that's the setup we're talking about here, because that's the whole thing. Phantasm to protect himself from the forces of inertia. Within the circle, sorry, I need to zoom back in. Within the circle of his acquaintances, Nietzsche's vision of the Hellenic state appalled Wagner. Again, this is where Nietzsche went, slavery is awesome for cultural growth. He totally did that. That's the way it works. You're not hearing anything? That's on your side. Is everyone else doing okay?
Yep.
All right, cool.
Brooks,
yeah.
Inertia. I know that I'm dumb and I don't know English, but inertia. What's the meaning of inertia? Inertia is
the weight of something being so heavy that it's the amount of force required in order to make something move or change state. Inertia is the nature of things to not change unless acted upon by an outside force. And inertia is, if we want to talk about it more poetically, a big ship in a sea that's going in one direction. You can run up and like push it as hard as you want. You're not gonna change directions very quickly. Like inertia is a fucking beast. And that's kind of what Nietzsche was running into, is the inertia of academia. We see this today, the inertia of the American hegemony, for example. right? Like there's inertia. There just is. And it's a thing that has to be dealt with. It's a thing that has to be talked about, but it just feels like, God damn it. Like that's just all of that. But so Nietzsche, had the phantasm, secret phantasm, and the Hellenizing aspect of it, as they say, that would accord forces of the unspoken. So he wrote, hey, slavery actually helps things a lot. And Nietzsche's vision of the Hellenic state appalled Wagner and Rodi as well. It was his encounter with Rea. I've heard every fucking version of this. I'm just going to say Re. And
Paul. Yeah. Paul Rie.
Paul Rie.
He met Nietzsche, and Nietzsche congratulates him. I don't know. English is in my tongue heavy. Congratulates him for his kind of religious discovery or religious because he specializes in religious research and psychology and religion and yada yada yada, etc.
Well, no, that's exactly the point. So it was his encounter. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rhizomatic.
I don't know. I want to hear the response as well. Sorry. I'll go after.
So it's I was just going to continue reading the text because that's what he kind of goes into. Is that Paul Rea was a disabused spirit. So go ahead.
Yeah, I get a question. Does Nietzsche mean like slavery as in actual chattel slavery, or as in like slavery, master slave dialectic slavery? In that context.
Slavery. Like he was Hellenic Greek style slavery, where I guess respectable slavery, not quite chattel slavery, but if you haven't read it, it's worth reading. Greek State. You can find it. I think a translated version is pretty available online. It is not great.
Yeah.
It is not. It's not great. It's basically, hey, look, a lot of people need to do really, really shitty work for no pay, and they should be very happy to do that because most people are kind of pointless. And a few really smart people should be free to do whatever they want because of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Thanks
for the clarification.
Yeah, it's not. In no way am I defending it. But what's interesting from the way Klossowski's talking about it is the process of it. And it's, again, because we don't do the totalizing people things here. Nietzsche wasn't always this. He's eternally this thing. He came to this. He was doing this. It's actually, a lot of it is, and if you go back and read, it is very much a response to I don't want to say like an alt-right response to the centrist academia, but that's not a terrible way to talk about it because it's for him, he saw this way out of like, hey, I can use this Hellenizing influence and do radical things. But he met Paul Rea, a disabused spirit that encouraged a demystifying tendency in him. Because again, Birth of Tragedy, all that stuff, very mystific, very much in that direction. And the furious assaults of his illness would soon throw him back in a period of isolation, which further encouraged his contemplative states and an ever greater abandonment to the tonalities of his soul. It was during one such moment in the month of August 1881 at Sillery that the ecstasy of the eternal return would surprise him. This is his personal correspondence to Gast, and I don't think we have to do a lot of explanation here because this is a very clear letter, and I really do like it. And I don't want to defend it. I can, but it'll sound bad. Yes, it will. It's just easier to go, hey, edgy boy, relax. Oh, his later works literally say the opposite in every single way, and he denounces his own beliefs throughout the rest of his works. Oh, well, okay, cool. That's for me, that's kind of the deal. So he had to go through his Edgelord era. I mean, it's one of those things that, again, it's the reason I bring up the alt-right thing. If you don't have at least a semblance of, God, I hate the, normative position, like just at all, or the idea of burn it all down, I hate it all, like that thrust, like that, it's a revolutionary spirit. It is. The investment directly in it, the reactionary spirit that's hyper-conservative doesn't really experience it in the same way. The revolutionary spirit, the unconscious investments, they're in counter to the system. They're in different places. That can be turned because there's a lot of parts of things. These forces don't just come out as what they are. Oh, yes, no, I'm 9 years old and I'd like everything to change. I've come across all of the wonderful Black Panther writings. Like, this is not how people live in the places they live, in the times they live, in the ways they live, and they get to read the things that they've read. And so in that, what would be the thing that seems revolutionary? What would be the thing that seems counter to what everyone else is doing? Well, for Nietzsche, and that's Klossowski's argument, is the Hellenic state. Everyone in this period he was in was, everyone's so equal, and they were super Christian, and it was super egalitarian to like a really weird, in that really weird, gross way that we sort of know as liberalism now. That thing, well, what if we weren't all equal? What if some people are better than others? Because again, Marx agreed not everyone's equal. Like the idea that everyone is equal is what he's rebelling against. And in his writings, you can read it, you can see that. But he goes in a fucking bloop, bloop direction very quickly. And can you imagine Wagner being like, dude, too much. Now, can we go just kill all the Jews? It's fucking, wow. He's just Wagner of all people being like, dude, tone it down. I kind of think that'd be, I get a kick out of that. Anyway, let's read the thing. Sorry, go for it. Please.
Yeah, I'll try to make it short, but the thing is, I don't think it's very away from whatever he wrote before. And I do think actually it's an exact continuous of the idea, but not in the bad way it's found. And here where it gets interesting, because when we say everyone was equal, for example, during the modernity or the Romantic Age or the 18th century, to what extent is that accurate? Because it was equal only within a certain class. It was the way of, like, what exists is the bourgeois and whatever else doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's similar to the caste system of India.
Yeah, so exactly. So when you think of the even technology, even the Industrial Revolution, it was built upon slaves. It was like the reason why there was an Enlightenment age. One of the main like certain grounds of that led to all the Enlightenment and then modernity is slavery. And this is a very Greek way of thinking. And like the whole point where Greeks had philosophy, if you read, for example, Socrates and whatever, the main idea of being a human is not working, is not to be within a labor system that consumes your everyday energy into a work of what they think is as non-human, or being an animal, where all of your energy, all of your desires are either trying to not be a predator, trying to be a predator and not a prey, like trying to get to eat, not to be eaten. And in that way, you're consumed fully within this system. And but the where it gets interesting, where it gets bad, is what Nietzsche didn't understand, what others as well, which is Hannah Arendt, for example. She also concluded the same conclusions, which are as horrible and which is surprising. But like what they don't get is that during the Greeks, there wasn't capitalism of coding and decoding over the over on the surface of the body without organs. What's happening now, so to the Greeks, there wasn't an identitarian way of thinking of humans. What is a human to the Greeks is who exists within Athena, is who think, who have the ability to think. But this isn't modernity. Modernity and capitalism is no longer that way. What defines human is something completely different. Hence the thinking. So the drawing lines of trying to make a Greek state or whatever, in the notion of free man, free from labor or something, is always fascism in many ways. It will end up fascism. And you see these Hannah Arendt, for example, not celebrating the equality in Rousseau's or the French Revolution, but she celebrates the U.S. American system, where basically she says it, which is the right weren't right to everyone; it was right to white. So you see what I'm trying to explain. She's right in the way she thinks. He's right in the way they think. What's going on?
Right.
Which is,
well, and so this is the way I would rephrase it, because I want to go back to the first way you put it, where you said, well, the idea underneath, or the idea is getting at, this is how people talk about these things. But what if we say it differently? What if we talk about the phantasms that Nietzsche is experiencing, and the arrangement of them as they're coming about, his attempt to turn them into simulacra, to turn them into the written word, books, stories, whatever it was. His version of that was his attempt to make the simulacra of the phantasms, but the phantasms weren't necessarily complete. It doesn't mean that some didn't go away or that there weren't other forces that left. This is the changes over time were within what we would call the organism Nietzsche. And then the phantasm that's within Nietzsche, as a thing, he then reproduces. This setup as a productive capacity is the thing to be considering. It's not that Nietzsche was wrong and grew. We can say that, but what does that really mean? Well, what it means kind of to Klossowski, and we'll be getting through this letter, is Nietzsche had more that came to him, and that changed the forces and how they worked, which changed the phantasm, and then ultimately his ability to then create simulacrum. Over time, the ability to make that adjustment and change. There's a really interesting sort of consistency but non-consistency at play here that I think you're going to see really quickly, because the big deal is ultimately the eternal return shows up for Nietzsche. And it's 1879, Silmarie, and he writes aghast, and he says, I am at the end of my 35th year, the middle of life, as people for a millennium and a half has said of this age. And we're saying again, it used to be 40, but now it's again, because we're all dying younger. It was at this age that Dante had his vision, and in the opening lines of his poem, he mentions the fact. We're going to go through the whole letter. I'm not stopping. Now I am in the middle of life, and so encircled by death, that from any minute it can lay hold of me. From the nature of my sufferings, I must reckon upon a sudden death through convulsions, although I should prefer 100 times a slow, lucid death, before which I should be able to converse with my friends, even if it were more painful. In this way, I feel like the oldest of men, even from the standpoint of having completed my life task. I have poured a salutary drop of oil. This I know, and I shall not be forgotten for it. At bottom, I have already undergone the test of my own view of life. Many more will have to do it after me. Up to the present, my spirit has not been depressed by the unremitting suffering that my ailments have caused me. At times, I even feel more cheerful and more benevolent than I ever felt in my life before. To what do I owe this invigorating and ameliorating effect? Certainly not to my fellow men, for, with but few exceptions, they have all during the last few years shown themselves offended by me, nor have they shrunk from letting me know it. Just read this last manuscript through, my dear friend, and ask yourself whether there are any traces of suffering or depression to be found in it. I don't believe there are, and this very belief is a sign that there must be powers concealed in these views, and not the proofs of impotence and lassitude after which my enemies will seek. I shall not come to you myself, however urgently the Overbecks and my sister may press me to do so. There are states in which it seems to me more fitting to return to the neighborhood of one's mother, one's home, and the memories of one's childhood. But do not take all this as final and irrevocable. According as his hopes rise or fall, an invalid should be allowed to make or unmake his plans. My program for the summer is complete. 3 weeks at a moderate altitude in Weissen, 3 months in the Engadine, and the last month in taking the real St. Moritz drink cure, the best effect of which is not supposed to be felt before winter. This working out of a program was a pleasure to me, but it was not easy. Self-denial in everything. I have no friends, no company. I could read no books. All art was far removed from me. A small bedroom with a bed, the food of an ascetic, which by way suited me excellently, for I have no indigestion the whole of the summer. This self-denial was complete except for one point. I gave myself up to my thoughts. What else could I do? Of course, this was the very worst thing for my head, but I still do not see how I could have avoided it. But enough, this winter my program will be to recover from myself, to wrest myself away from my thoughts. For years, I have not had this experience. That's letter 1. That's letter 1. Letter 2, written, one sec, I want to make sure I get it right. That's the 11th that's September 11th. This is 5th of October. This is not very far away. We're going to be going through a few of these. There are a handful of letters we have in store here. This is kind of a big deal. Okay? This is kind of a big deal for Klossowski. First letter, very simple version. I'm ill, but I've found odd calmness in it. Hey, I'm going to go away now, and I'm going to take care of myself. You would not believe, the 5th of October, you would not believe with what fidelity I have carried out the program of thoughtlessness so far. I have reasons for fidelity here, for behind thought stands the devil of a tormenting attack of pain. The manuscript which you received from St. Moritz was written at such a high and hard price that perhaps nobody would have written it if he could possibly have avoided doing so. Often I shudder to read it, especially the longer parts, because of the ugly memories it brings. All of it, except for a few lines, was thought out on walks, and it was sketched out in pencil in 6 small notebooks. A fair copy made me ill almost every time I set about writing it. I had to omit about 20 longish thought sequences, unfortunately quite essential ones, because I could not find the time to extract them from my frightful pencil scribbling. The same was true last summer. In the interim, the connections between the thoughts escape my memory. I have to steal the minutes and quarter hours of brain energy, as you call it, steal them away from a suffering brain. Sometimes I think that I shall never do it again. I'm reading the copy you made and find it difficult to understand myself. My head is that tired. Second thing. Hey, remember I sent you that? Now I'm not understanding what I wrote. I did understand it. Klossowski, we just talked about this 2 paragraphs ago. Man, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking when I wrote that shit. What the fuck? Yeah, that. Now, here we are, a couple months later. This is to Melvida von Meinsberg. Probably a Nazi. Sorry, just assuming. Although writing is for me one of the most forbidden fruits, yet I must write a letter to you, whom I love and respect like an elder sister, and it will probably be the last. For my life's terrible and almost unremitting martyrdom makes me thirst for the end. It's a little bit of a different tone than the last 2 letters. And there have been some signs which allow me to hope that the stroke which will liberate me is not too distant. It's really dark. There's a hope that the stroke which will liberate me is not too distant. As regards torment and self-denial, my life during these past years can match that of any ascetic of any time. Nevertheless, I have wrung from these years much in the way of purification and burnishing of the soul. I no longer need religion or art as a means to that end. You will notice that I am proud of this. In fact, complete isolation alone enabled me to discover my own resources of self-help. I think that I've done my life's work, though, of course, like a person who had no time. But I know that I have poured out a good drop of oil for many, that I have given to many an indication of how to rise above themselves, how to attain equanimity and a right mind. I write this as an afterthought. Really, it should only be said on the completion of my humanity. No pain has been, or should be, able to make me bear false witness about life as I know it to be. Boy, it's really sad. He's in a fucking bad place. But even this, Afnan, his writing is stunning. Like every line is, even in his worst moments, I just love Nietzsche's writing. It's so good.
You notice why writing is to him a forbidden fruit? Because Nietzsche considers writing just as thought, something that you shouldn't do unless you're invoked.
Right.
And it's like an invite. So you know how now, for example, I think in your AI video, you talked about that the amount of information that is being uploaded right now.
Yes.
It was like an enormous big number.
It is the entire internet that existed prior to 2010 in every capacity is being uploaded every minute.
Fuck. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. So to him, writing is this invitation moment that you're invited by the world. You're being called to write. Yet writing is forbidden because not in the notion that writing is the taboo. No, writing is an exercise, as Deleuze says, an exercise to kill the father. So it's always this process, This part is beautiful, really.
So he's down. We'll say he's a little in the dumps. He's having a tough time, but some things to focus on. Yeah, the setup. He's elevated, excited about this time. I finally have time to myself. I've had time to myself. I hate all of this so much. Oh God, why doesn't God just take me as a thing? To Dr. Iser. This is, again, just a few weeks later. Yeah, 2 weeks later. To dare to write a letter, I have to wait 4 weeks for a tolerable moment, after which I still have to pay for it. That's fucking... My existence is a dreadful burden. I would have rejected it long ago had I not been making the most instructive experiments in the intellectual and moral domain in just this condition of suffering and almost complete renunciation. This joyous mood, avid for knowledge, raised me to heights where I triumphed over every torture and all despair. On the whole, I am happier now than I have ever been in my life. Sorry, the paragraph starts with my existence is a dreadful burden. I am happier now than I have been in my entire life. Sorry. This fucking dude, he's something. And yet, continual pain. For many hours of the day, a sensation closely akin to seasickness, a semi-paralysis that makes it difficult to speak, alternating with furious attacks. The last one made me vomit for 3 days and 3 nights. I longed for death. I can't read, rarely write, visit no one, can't listen to music. I keep to myself and take walks in the rarefied air, a diet of eggs and milk. No pain-relieving remedies work. The cold is harmful to me. In the coming weeks, I will go south to begin my existence as a walker. It's like the worst thing ever I'm reading. This ends well-ish. This part ends well-ish, but it's so fucking dark. My only consolation is my thoughts and perspectives. In the course of my wanderings, I now and then scribble something on a piece of paper. I write nothing at my work table. Friends decipher my scribblings. My last product, which my friends wound up completing, will follow, accepted gladly, even if it does not conform to your own way of thinking. I do not seek disciples, believe me. I enjoy my freedom and wish this joy to all those who have the right to spiritual freedom. Yes, this joy. That starts with, just to say again, starts with, my existence is a dreadful burden. I have already lost consciousness several times. During the spring of last year at Basel, they had given up all hope for me. My sight has visibly worsened since my last consultation. That's it. That's fucking, it's the whole thing. To Overbeck, November, 6 months. This is 10 months later? Now, my whole endeavor is to realize an ideal attic dweller's solitude, which will do justice to all those necessary and most elementary demands of my nature. As many, many torments have taught me to know them, and perhaps I shall succeed. The daily struggle against my head trouble, and the laughable complexity of my distresses demands so much attention that I am in danger of becoming petty in this regard. Well, that is the counterweight to very general, very lofty impulses, which have such control over me that without the counterweight I would make a fool of myself. I have just come around from a very grueling attack, and having hardly shaken off the distress of the past 2 days, I find my foolery already pursuing quite incredible things. From the moment I wake up, and I think that no other attic dweller can have had the dawn shine upon more lovely and more desirable things. That's like poetically joyous. I dig the shit out of that. Now this is to his mom. This is to his mom. Imagine writing your mother this. I mean, I'm assuming if you're Nietzsche's mom, you're kind of expecting this. Like, there's no way he doesn't write like this, but still. My nervous system is splendid in view of the immense work it has to do. It is quite sensitive, but very strong. A source of astonishment to me. Even the long and severe maladies, an occupation which did not suit me, and a dead wrong treatment have not harmed it, basically. Indeed, within the past year, it has become stronger, and owing to it, I have produced one of the most daring, the sublimest, and deepest books ever spawned by the human brain and heart. Thank you, Gingeros, for the $5. I don't think about that. It's yay. So this is almost a year after the previous, right? So again, thinking of the time frame. Oh, I'm going to go enjoy a couple months off. Oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Oh, this is actually turning out okay. Hey, this is the best thing ever, Mom. Mom, this is so great. Even had I committed suicide at Recurrence, a man would have died who was the most indomitable and absolutely superior, not one who had given up in despair. With respect to the scientific material I require, I am in yet a better position than any and all physicians. More yet, my scientific pride is offended when you are suggesting that I should submit to new treatments and even express the opinion that I did not do anything for my sickness. So, I think we can infer Mom wrote a letter saying, you really need to seek help. Why haven't you talked to anyone? Why are you sitting alone in a fucking cabin like a freak? Please, dear God, talk to a doctor. No, I am offended you are suggesting I should submit to new treatments and even express the opinion I did not do anything for my sickness. You should have a little more confidence in these matters. Up to now, I have been, he's a petulant child, I love it. Up to now, I have been under my own governance for only 2 years. And if I did not make any mistakes, if I did make any mistakes, it was always owing to the fact that I ultimately yielded to the earnest entreaties of others and submitted to experimentation. In this category belong my stays in Malmberg and Marienbad, etc. Moreover, every competent physician has prognosticated my recovery, but not before a number of years has elapsed. Above all, I must try and get rid of the grave after effects of all those wrong methods by which I have been treated for such a long time. I implore you, don't be angry with me if I seem to reject your love and sympathy in this matter. I fully intend to continue henceforth as my own physician. Moreover, people shall say after I am dead that I was a good physician, and not only in my behalf. Be that as it may, I shall still have to look forward to many... See, look, there are M dashes. This is AI. And Nietzsche was using Claude. Be that as it may, I shall still have to look forward to many periods of illness. Do not become impatient the while. I beg of you with all my heart. This makes me more irritable than the sickness itself, because it demonstrates to me that my nearest relatives display so little faith in me. Whoever could secretly look on me as I am practicing, combining my concern for my own recovery with promoting my great tasks, would pay me no mean compliment. She told him to get married. Yeah, I mean, that's you can tell this was like a response to like, Mom, no, I'm good. I'm gonna do this. I'm a big boy. It's granted, it's the old German 1880s version of it, which probably involved, I don't know, comments about Jews.
It's also a resistance of paternal and maternal, what you talked about in the videos, right?
Yeah, very much. He's very petulantly refusing any sort of oversight or correction from outside. It's So now we're going to get to Klossowski's sort of reading of this. And again, we are going to this is just him talking at this point. He's talking through Nietzsche's life. He's talking through the things he wants us to be aware of, because chapter 3 is going to be a big deal. So this is building up towards it. So these are all just facts. This is not analysis. These are just ways Klossowski wants us to be looking at the thing. This is not complicated from here for a little bit. If there is a thing you don't grasp, don't hesitate to make a comment. Hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? I'm happy to stop, but I am going to just start plowing through this. I'm not going to read too fast, hopefully, but there's a lot said here as he's going through and explaining all of this. Whatever the origin of Nietzsche's migraines, hereditary as he himself seemed to believe, or accidentally syphilitic, as the various cross-checkings of later witnesses tried to establish, and from which Jaspers concluded that Nietzsche's delirium was characterized by a general paralysis, the fact remains that from the outset, the illness periodically struck Nietzsche in the cerebral organ. Nietzsche often took long walks on foot. His thoughts came to him step by step, and then he would return home and work on the notes he had written in pencil outdoors. The migraines then appeared, sometimes affecting his vision. At times he was unable to reread his notes and would leave the task to his friends. Peter Gast, in this way, learned how to decipher his illegible handwriting. Nietzsche was often forced to give up all reading, all writing, all reflection. He followed a treatment, a diet. He changed climate. Moreover, he distrusted therapeutics. Little by little, he managed to invent a therapy of his own derived from his own observations. Once he recovered his faculties, he tried to describe this suspension of thought, to reflect on the cerebral functioning in relation to other organic functions, and he began to distrust his own brain. That's literally fantastically said, flatly. The act of thinking became identical with suffering, and suffering with thinking. From this fact, Nietzsche posited the coincidence of thought with suffering and asked what a thought would be that was deprived of suffering. Thinking suffering, reflecting on past suffering as the impossibility of thinking, then came to be experienced by Nietzsche as the highest joy. But does thought really have the power to actualize itself without itself suffering, without reconstituting its own suffering? Does thought itself suffer from its own inability to actualize itself? What then is doing the suffering or enjoying? The brain? Can the cerebral organ enjoy the suffering of the body of which it is a function? Can the body rejoice in the suffering of its supreme organ? If you've read Nietzsche, you know 100% where he's going with this. But if you haven't, you'll get there. Don't worry. This is a Salome response. It was when he felt most healthy and most robust, in complete control of his creative powers, that he came closest to his illness. And it was the forced rest and idleness that would again allow him to recover and keep the catastrophe in suspense. See the back and forth, thinking about the thing. Boo, 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 boo. If the body concerns our most immediate forces as those which, in terms of their origin, are the most distant, then everything the body says, its well-being as well as its diseases, gives us the best information about our destiny. Nietzsche, therefore, wanted to go back toward what, in himself, was the most distant in order to comprehend the most immediate. Before describing how one becomes what one is, Nietzsche first put in question what one is. He never hesitated to say that certain of his books were written while his health was at such and such a point. For example, the moment he felt it to be at its lowest point. The agonizing migraines, which Nietzsche experienced periodically as an aggression that suspended his thought, were not an external aggression. The root of the evil was in himself, in his own organism. His own physical self was attacking in order to defend itself against a dissolution. But what was being threatened with dissolution? Nietzsche's own brain. Whenever his migraines subsided, Nietzsche would put his state of respite in the service of this dissolution. For the dissolution was judged to be such only by the brain, for whom the physical self and the moral self apparently coincide. But the body provided Nietzsche with a completely different perspective, namely, the perspective of active forces, which, as organic and therefore subordinate forces, expressed a will to break with this servitude. But they could do so only if this will passed through the brain. The brain, on the other hand, could experience this will only as its own subordination to these dissolving forces. It was threatened with the impossibility of thinking. Nietzsche experienced this dissolving confrontation between somatic and spiritual forces for a long time. And he observed it passionately. The more he listened to his body, the more he came to distrust the person the body supports. His obsessive fear of suicide, born out of the despair, and that his atrocious migraines would never be cured, amounted to a condemnation of the body in the name of the person being diminished by it. But the thought that he had not yet finished his life's work gave him the fortitude to side with the body. If the body is presently in pain, if the brain is sending nothing but distress signals, it is because a language is trying to make itself heard at the price of reason. A suspicion, a hatred, a rage against his own conscious and reasonable person was born. This person, fashioned by a particular epoch, in a familial milieu he increasingly abhorred, is not what he wanted to conserve. He would destroy that person out of a love for the nervous system he knew he had been gifted with and in which he took a certain pride. By studying the reactions of his nervous system, he would come to conceive of himself in a different manner than he had previously known. And indeed, in a manner that will perhaps never again be known. Consequently, he developed a mode of intelligence which he wanted to submit to exclusively physical criteria. He not only interpreted sufferings as energy, but willed it to be so. Physical suffering would be livable only insofar as it was closely connected to joy, insofar as it developed a voluptuous lucidity. Either it would extinguish all possible thought, or it would reach the delirium of thought. I really like this book. I do want to take a moment here. Is everyone kind of following? Is this making okay sense? Because this last paragraph is kind of where we start getting into the deeper, more complicated analysis again. Or is everyone following the stories on Nietzsche's side at least? The sort of junior incel upset about chicken tendies kind of thing he was doing. Not joking, actually. It's not always negative to be anti-parent, anti-authority, anti-maternal or paternalistic. It's not always a negative thing. But it's a very specific rotation. Because we're not talking about Nietzsche finding a way to make his thoughts work. It's actually quite different. He's trying to make thinking happen because suffering is interrupting, also creating, also working with thought. His brain is fucking with the rest of the interactions of his body. His brain is sort of a conductor of types, and all these forces are coming through it, and his brain is going, this is important. You can't trust your brain. The more he listened to the body, the more he came to distrust the person the body supports. It's one of the best lines that is going to be really important as we go. The more he listened to the body, the more he came to distrust the person his body supports. Nietzsche's philosophical development. And then to go back to the Hellenic all the way through, this is an interesting through line Klossowski's kind of giving us, but this is not about a dualistic opposition or anything like this. This is a push towards listening to the somatic essences of his body and understanding a different thing. Traditional philosophical priorities at his time were very focused on the brain, the mind, the identity, the thought, the spirit, whatever you want to say. And Nietzsche's like, no. Quite the opposite, actually. This is a very different shift. Bodily sensations aren't to be thought of as sub-mind, but actually, like, when you philosophize with a hammer, as he's talking about it, you strike notes with a tuning fork. You hear the sounds, you hear the resonances within things. The keys of those songs is what the body is showing you. And these are keys of thought rather than obstacles to knowledge. The way that the body operates, the way he grows to distrust the person the body supports. The idea of personal identity being problematic for Nietzsche absolutely comes through here. Like beyond, it's absolutely in here. Because the self is ultimately a social structure of drives and affects that exist between people. It's not really a unified subject. And you can see it as his illness is creating this, and he's gotten these ebbs and flows of these impulses. He's beginning to say the things he will come to say. He's beginning to say the things he will come to say a lot more clearly later on. Last thing I want to say, just talk about real quick, is at the very end here. Because I want to go through a handful of these phrases because it's important, and they're some jargony, beautiful wording. Klossowski is nothing if not a stunning writer, but the wording is a little bit archaic and a little bit there. So just to go through, he developed a mode of intelligence he wanted to submit to exclusively physical criteria. Again, post-Enlightenment 1800s to even now, intelligence is considered to be something that's in here, like between the ears. That's where your brain is. But no, he wants to make a different move. Physical suffering would be livable only insofar as it was closely connected to joy, insofar as it developed a voluptuous lucidity. The phrasing of this and the way voluptuous is being used is kind of, again, more traditional psychoanalytic terminology. Wohlstiege, Klarheit, which is a voluptuous has erotic connotations to it, like a voluptuous body. It's erotic, arousing, but not sex. It's not necessarily sex, but it's arousing. Something is aroused. It's kind of the idea. So when we talk about this, it tends to connect into that. The anti-asceticism comes through this. The concept of this voluptuous lucidity is cognitive erotic, bodily somatic with cognitive. And he ends it by saying either it would extinguish all possible thought or reach the delirium of thought. Sorry, pardon me on that. The thinking can either be preconceptual or hyperconceptual, and it can do this simultaneously. It's going to be a big deal as we move forward. That's kind of the important language there, just to sort of go through it. The delirium of thought is very much... if you ever find yourself lost in thought, thinking about a thing, you're not able to, this is the delirium of thought, as Nietzsche talked about it. Delirium, what other fucking German shit I have written? I can't read any of it. I should stop that. Everyone makes fun of me. But that's kind of where we're at right now. Does that make sense? Shit. There it is. All right, let's see. We got... Yeah, we're not going to make it through this. That's today. That's fine. It's fine. We're going to do a couple more paragraphs. This PDF is shit sometimes. But he sensed yet another trap in serenity. Is a thought freed from all physical oppression something real? No, for other impulses are in the process of taking delight in it. More often than not, such delight is merely a report of the absence of such suffering, which have apparently been overcome, and hence their representation. Remember, phantasm, simulacra, for the imago internally to the production of it. Serenity is merely a kind of armistice between irreconcilable impulses. Impulses is going to be a word I'm going to begin using a lot more. You'll probably hear it in the AO readings. I much prefer it to the use of desire because of its problematic English connotations, but also libido because of its psychoanalytic connotations. Impulses of forces is what Nietzsche is talking about and really driving a lot of time in it. For Nietzsche, serenity, which is these moments of relaxation, which we saw in his writing, he sees them also as, like, he's not like, oh, it's so nice now. He's like, there's fucking something weird about this. This shit's a trap, I think. It's a problem. It's a problem. This serenity thing, the calmness. And calmness being something that is maybe bad is kind of, that's a thing. I would say, I don't think it's extreme for me to say, a very common thread in a lot of philosophical traditions over the course of the last 5,000 years in every corner of the world is this idea or understanding that, like, serenity or the serene wise man is kind of the best or pinnacle of philosophy or philosophical thought or even religious thought, the enlightened who's calm and serene and sees everything like that. Nietzsche just basically says, yeah, actually that's a trap and it's a problem. It's not good at all. It's actually not good, which is
quick question for you.
Yeah, please.
The stereotypical wise calm man that's beyond all disturbances.
Yeah.
I have read some works. Are you familiar with the word ataraxia?
No.
Okay. In Greek, it's basically means no disturbance. It's easily connected to the young things, but I think by itself, ataraxia, it does bring up some very important points. I was just curious. I had this literature reading. I think it's called anema ataraxia, but I can bring up later. Just wanted to check.
We'll do it later, and also you're totally coming through in a really funky way. Just letting you know. No worries, but yeah, we can come back to it later. For him, he wants us to, again, look at the impulses behind these things. That serenity isn't a state of calmness where there's no forces at play. No, actually quite different. Serenity is a kind of armistice between irreconcilable impulses. Such delight is merely a report of the absence of suffering, which has apparently been overcome, and hence their representation. This is just a wildly different way of considering all of this. And so, again, he's coming at it from the position of pain, the position of suffering as being the thing that he's experiencing through thought and thought doing and his brain directing. And he's like, serenity isn't exactly, it's the other thing. But it's the brain directing and doing this. Their other impulses are in the process of taking delight in it. That's the armistice is that these impulses are there, but they're taking delight in that. This isn't a thing. This doesn't fix anything. This doesn't change anything. Not really. It's a trap of itself. And that's kind of the thing he's pushing towards. The way Nietzsche is going to be making a move, and again, from here, for Klossowski, this is the turning point for Nietzsche, this period of extreme illness and reclusion and ascetic, and then moving into a very different space. All of this comes from these periods of this alternating health and sickness. And Nietzsche himself talks about this as well, pretty extensively. But the idea here is, how to put it? The idea that what we experience as serenity, pleasure, satisfaction is actually a cessation of tension. It's not really a positive thing. Serenity isn't a positive experience. It's an absence of the negative, absence of suffering, absence of pain, experienced or seen as the negative image. Because it's the absence. We presume that it's, as a negative image, it's the affirmative. This is, for Nietzsche, kind of a big deal, actually. Hence, their representation is kind of about saying that serenity actually preserves and sort of presents the very suffering that it claims to have overcome because the forces are enamored with it. It's more about perpetuating pain, actually. That's that type of serenity.
I think I remember Nietzsche even talking about it as sort of a death, basically. Right, that kind of serenity and surrender.
People are getting buffering on YouTube. 1 second. I haven't gotten a single fucking... I've gotten no warnings. I fucking hate YouTube sometimes. It's wild. No warning. Stream health perfect. No messages whatsoever. Great.
Wonderful. Was my voice coming through okay?
No, it's not on. It's not on this side. It's people on YouTube are like, apparently I disconnected for a moment. Great. I didn't notice it on my end, but whatever. This is fucking what a nightmare. No, you didn't disconnect. You kind of finished my point, which is good.
Okay, great.
So to continue then, because that kind of follows for there. There seems to be a strict correlation between the phenomenon of pain, which is experienced by the organism, and the aggression of an invading external power, and the biological process that leads to the formation of the brain. We're going to stop here. I'm just going to read this. This is a footnote in the original text. In the domain of animal biology, the formation of the brain presupposes an explanatory progression of which the brain is the instrument. In Nietzsche, there is a tendency to liberate the exploration in relation to the instrument, inasmuch as the latter would subordinate what is acquired in the exploration to its limited functional ends. This is why he aspires to a decentralization and thus a ubiquity, whence also his rejection of a system of thought. That's why he doesn't write that's why he writes in aphorisms. He doesn't believe in a system of thought because he doesn't believe there's really a brain as we're talking about it, that like is thinking logically constantly and is taking in, all this makes sense to me. I have a perfectly logical mind. You know, logic says, people who say that, you can immediately dismiss basically everything they say. Logic says, no, it doesn't. Ever. That's not how logic works. And that's kind of his point.
It's about having something that you can work through and make sense of.
Yeah,
right?
Logic is a system that says nothing. It's empty. You have to put things in it and find out if they work logically together based on the rules of each subset category. So it's kind of a self-creating process. And again, for Nietzsche, the formation of the brain presupposes this progression of which the brain is the instrument of it. And so he's like, this is stupid, which is fair. The brain, which concentrates all the reflexes on fighting the aggression, is able to represent the inflicted pain as degrees of excitations oscillating between pain and pleasure. The brain can have representations only if it meticulously spiritualizes the elementary excitations into the danger of pain or the good fortune of pleasure, a discharge that may or may not result in further excitations. But the painful excitation can form a satisfaction that is itself experienced as pain to the degree that it upsets an equilibrium that had been momentarily attained by the organism, an equilibrium that, in a prior state, it was able to experience as joy. This prior satisfaction of the excitation leaves a trace of intensity in the brain, which can then reactualize it as a joy of re-excitation by the act of representing it to itself. But Nietzsche supposes that this excitation is then being exercised on another self. is the flux of the three syntheses. It's hard for me not to just read Deleuze immediately in this. I hope I'm not alone in that, dear Lord. But this is it's a great language as a thing. But again, as he's talking about it, notice as Klossowski's talking about, these things are happening in time. There's a temporality to these things. There's a setup that puts things in very particular order, right? The body wants to make, this is the kind of the point. The body wants to make itself understood through the intermediary of a language of signs that is fallaciously deciphered by consciousness. Consciousness itself constitutes this code of signs that inverts, falsifies, and filters what is expressed through the body. Okay? Phantasm, simulacrum. Phantasm, simulacrum. The impulses, phantasm, simulacrum. But the body wants to make itself understood through the intermediary of a language of signs it fallaciously deciphered by consciousness. The communicative intention is there in the body. The body wants to make itself understood. The body has a will to do such things. There's because he means will. That's what he's saying here. Will is the original. We don't really use that, but want is troubling. The body wills to make itself understood. Sich Verstand machen will. This is, again, for his time, a absolute reversal of everything that was kind of the thing in the jam of the time. Everyone's very focused on the soul, the brain, the mind, the scientific inquiry, all of this. But for him, he's saying like a language of signs. That's not language, first off. It's not language as we know it. It's a language of signs. It's like a pre-linguistic semiotic system that works somatically. Gestures, bodily symptoms, affects, the affects, emotionally bodily emotion shit, underlie and precede this conceptual communication. And that's why he calls it this fallacious deciphering. It's an interpretive error. It's a fuck up. It's misrecognition. It is consciousness working and necessarily misreading. Necessarily misreading. That's what it does. It's necessarily misreading this. That's how this is operating. It's necessarily misreading. Because again, it's misrecognizing all of this. They're incompatible categories of things as a thing. This is him doing like the post-structuralist shit really early. Like it was really early. But this is the gaps between signifier, signified. But again, a semiotic analysis itself in physiognomy, which is crazy. There's a lot here. There's a lot here, just in this tiny paragraph. And just in that sentence, Jesus Christ. Because the second part, consciousness itself constitutes this code of signs that inverts, falsifies, and filters what is expressed through the body. So Deleuze's, when he says the image of thought, people again think they're thinking about the image of thought. No, you're doing the image of thought. That's it. You right now, as you're thinking, you're not thinking about thinking. You're thinking. You're doing the image of thought. You are, consciousness is the code of signs. The meta-analysis of it that you think you're doing is also consciousness, just being the code of signs that inverts, falsifies, and filters what is expressed through the body for Nietzsche. That's the entire setup. It is the active, creative role of consciousness has a very particular role. And what it's doing is it's producing a semiotic system through which it is then misinterpreting the bodily expressions of things, constituting code and misapplying it. That's the human condition, more or less. Consciousness isn't simply making an error. No. It is systematically distorting it. It is systematically distorting what the body is trying to get across. Yeah, that's how I'd phrase it probably. It is the mediator between the bodily social linguistic system, bodily processes, and this linguistic communication. And it is fucking it up. It inverts, falsifies, and filters. It is very particular. And again, I could go on. This fucking sentence these two sentences are kind of most of this book, and I'm trying not to like spoiler it, but it's like, even just as he's selecting it and you're saying like, we have, because this is straight up from Nietzsche. Nietzsche's things are inverts, falsifies, and filters. These are the three operant parts of the social linguistic setup. You have the reversal of hierarchy and causal relations in the inversion, right? So effects appear causal and consequences have origins. This is genealogy of morals. This is beyond good and evil. This is fucking in gay science. This is everything. Falsification. This is the not accidental error, but it's also not intentional. It is the way the system misreads a thing by its own logic, because it doesn't understand that it's a categorical difference. So as it's misreading, it's falsifying. It is not intentional, but it's not accidental. It's not an oopsie. There are systematic...
The same as the phantasm?
We'll get there.
Okay.
The phantasm is... this would be we'll get there. He's not there yet. I'm not going to start assigning his stuff. We're almost there. But we're not quite there. This is Nietzsche. I'm literally right here. He's actually just restating Nietzsche. This is I'm just restating Nietzsche. I'm not even saying for Klossowski. This is Nietzsche wrote about falsification, Würfelschwang, the very nature of how things become inverted because the systems corrupt their meaning at a basic level. Filtering is the selective attention that only allows things in that fit pre-established categories. This is all shit. Nietzsche and philosophy, if you want a good version of it, great way to do it. But it's all three of these are like, this is for Deleuze too. This is like core Nietzsche shit. This is really just, I mean, he's literally just revisiting Nietzsche in two sentences in a massive way. So like we're not even at Klossowski's version of this. He's just restating Nietzsche in a very concise kind of crazy fucking way. Like, it's amazing how much is in these two sentences to me. It's crazy.
So no wonder that in Human After Human, he said that when we see the waterfall running in the river, we think that we have a free will, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you see waterfall, right, flowing, we think that we have free will, but like if we calculate everything down to the minute details, we kind of like, predict like every kind of intention, right? But like he said specifically about this, it reminded me about the water. Nietzsche talked about the waterfall and how it's kind of, the interpretation of it gives us the full sense of free will, which is otherwise, right? Not the false, but the falsified filtering, right? Expressed to anybody, right? Whether liquid or anybody, right? Yeah.
It's a really nice summary of Nietzsche. But then we get to make the point. This is we're starting to get into Klossowski doing his interpretation now. But again, we're still talking mostly about Nietzsche. Chapter 3 is where Klossowski comes in full force. So there's a lot happening here, and just be ready for that because Jesus. It's a lot. Consciousness is itself nothing other than a deciphering of the messages transmitted by the impulses. Phantasm simulacra showing up here. The deciphering is in itself an inversion of the message, which is now attributed to the individual. Since everything leads to the head, the upright position, the message is deciphered in a way that will maintain this vertical position. There would be no message as such if this position were not habitual and specific. Meaning is formed in the upright position and in accordance with its own criteria: high, low, before, and after. This is again, restating Nietzsche, more or less. It's more or less just Nietzsche. I'm trying to figure out in my notes if I have anything else written, but it's like, I mean, this is, when he goes into herd mentality and he's talking about these things, when we talk about the head, vertical position, Nietzsche's being pulled in by Klossowski everywhere here. This is the idea of the way that we walk as humans, evolutionarily. The upright, the head through bipedal evolution is this specific interpretation in this particular way. Because it is habitual, it is systematized, and it's continually being reorganized kind of according to the requirements of this upright posture maintenance. The vertical position, which Nietzsche talks about kind of a lot, is not just some anatomical fact as a thing, but it is an organizing principle of how we operate that we just don't talk about. It's a presumed axiom ultimately underneath all that. And when we talk about and say, and he says there'd be no message as such if this position were not habitual and specific, like the meaning itself is contingent upon bodies that are taking it in and interpreting it as it does with the reactive or non-reactive forces, just generally. That the embodied cognition that is part and parcel of Nietzsche's experience, as Klossowski's talking about it, is necessary for understanding everything. And it's one example, but you're talking about a multitude of forces that go into understanding these things through this, again, habitual, processual nature. Completely eschewing the idea that it's inside of our minds and that the rest is sort of figured out as we go. That is not at all what's happening for Nietzsche. The brain is kind of the conductor, and all of the impulses pass through it. I mean, this is what his philosophy, Deleuze and Guattari basically do this, and in the same point, with the brain being the junction of all of the forces. Very much the same type of thing. If you had a different body, and you existed in that position, not if I put you in the body of a dog, but like a dog's existence fundamentally as dog, and as dog that's 11 years old, it would not have the same semiotic systems and interpretive possibilities. Not because it's not smart or anything, just fundamentally different realities. Fundamentally different. Fundamentally different realities. That'd probably be how I'd phrase it. And that's the high-low before and after. This is, again, super Nietzschean. This is the spatial coordinates of all of these things. This is the basic organizing principalities, the principles for how information is sort of digested and conceptualized in every way. The before and after is the temporal causal thinking of things. The up is good, the down is bad. Like this is genealogy of morals. He goes into this. This is the higher values, the lower values, shit like that. But again, this is just speaking all this. Continuing. Nietzsche did not speak on behalf of a hygiene of the body established by reason. He spoke on behalf of corporeal states as the authentic data that consciousness must conjure away in order to be an individual. This viewpoint far surpasses a purely physiological conception of life. The body is a product of chance. It is nothing but the locus where a group of individuated impulses confront each other so as to produce this interval that constitutes a human life. Impulses whose sole ambition is to de-individuate themselves. What is born from this chance association of impulses is not only the individual they constitute at the whims of circumstance, but also the eminently deceptive principle of a cerebral activity that progressively disengages itself from sleep. Consciousness seems to oscillate continually between somnolence, and insomnia. What we would call the waking state is merely the comparison of the two, their reciprocal reflection, like a play of mirrors. But there is no mirror without a Tane? What the fuck? There's no way that's in the original. God damn it. Sorry, 1 second. There's no mirror. I fucking hate PDFs sometimes. Sometimes they're just like, I genuinely feel like I'm losing my mind. It's like there's a taint? Are you talking about the taint? Tane. What is a tane? Does anyone know what a fucking tane is? I feel really dumb suddenly. Does anyone know what a tane is? Anyone? It's not taint. I know, I was joking when I said that. I shouldn't have made that joke. Tane. There's no mirror without a tane. 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 I cannot. That's not a Google search I want to be in my history. Not fuck. Autocomplete also agrees. A type of paper-thin tin plate. Tinfoil is used as a backing for mirrors. There we go. That makes more sense. Mirrors are not just magic. They have something on the backing that reflects, and they have the glass in front that allows that to exist. So, okay. Tane. It is this tane that forms the ground of reason. Forgetfulness is possible only because of the opacity of impulses. There's no consciousness without forgetfulness. But once it scratches the tane, consciousness itself in its very transparency merges with the flux and reflux of the impulses. Tane makes a lot more sense now that I know what that is. Is there another name for that shit that backs the fucking mirror? Because I don't know if I can handle saying tane over and over and over again. It's the silver deposit on the back of the glass. That's 100% what it's called. It's the reflective backing. But it's... OCR won that one. It just doesn't feel... I hate that word so fucking much. Silvering? Yeah, it's not going to work. But consciousness... I think it's there is no mirror without a tane. The tane is the solid backing. If you've never fucked with a mirror, there are cheap ones. Go buy one. It's actually really fascinating to see kind of how you can malform it by changing how the tane operates. Awful. But to him, he's saying this forms the ground of reason. It is the reflection. It is not the thing. And it is ephemeral. When you move, your image doesn't stay there. It's reflected quickly, very quickly. Speed of light level fucking quick. And forgetfulness is possible only because of the opacity of the impulses. The impulses are you could say the colors of light bouncing off. There's no consciousness without forgetfulness. Because again, if it recorded your image as you moved, it would just overwrite itself and you'd blend and then it'd build on, what the fuck? But you scratch the tane. Have you ever scratched your taint? Consciousness itself in its very transparency merges with the flux and reflux of the impulses. The phrasing here is, makes a lot more sense now that I know what a tane is. Why did I not? I don't think I read this right the first time. I don't have that in my notes. That's great. That's fucking awesome. That's my favorite thing. But the reflective surface of the mirror, and this just makes so much more sense than what I have written. Hopefully what I say now makes sense. This is not good. Doesn't matter. That backing, the opaque part, if it's damaged at all, the mirror doesn't really work as a pure reflective medium anymore. That scratch is always there. That breach is always there. It's a weird thing that happens when because that scratch, the back comes through. Light comes through the back end. It's no longer the reflection. It's now coming through. There's a really weird way that now, instead of this mediating distance or a reflection that's happening, this part of the conscious awareness that exists as we're looking at things, that scratch is actually consciousness almost breaking through and the forces breaking through, and they merge. Like they become together. Once it scratches itself, consciousness itself in its transparency merges with the flux and reflux of impulses. That makes a lot more sense than what I had written. Jesus Christ. What did I think was... I must have... Like Nietzsche, sometimes my own writings don't make sense to me. Yeah, Max Tane 3. I don't know what to fucking... It's Mirror's Taint, I guess. Wild. But again, just to go, let's go back a little bit, I think, here, because it's important. When we're talking about these things, again, the hygiene of the body was a big project of the Enlightenment era. The way that your body your brain is a muscle, your body's a muscle. You must work them out. You have to take care of these things. You must take care of these blah, blah, blah. That shit, this idea for him, regulating the body through like this scientific reason, regulating how you deal with your body through science. No, don't do this. This would encompass, and you spoke about eugenics as a thing, social hygiene, being around the unclean. He very much takes aim at the Indian caste system in this way. Instead, as he says, as Klossowski saying of it, he spoke on behalf of corporeal states as the authentic data that consciousness must conjure away in order to be an individual. Individuation itself is this really kind of magical thing that basically utilizes this like occulting process of the body. Yeah, that's how I'd probably phrase that. Conjure away the authentic data that consciousness must conjure away to be an individual. All of the parts of you that don't fit the idea of a singular thing, which is most of you, by the way, that we have to get rid of. We work to get rid of it. We cover it up. We systematically find ways to cover it up. This is the individual is a fiction socially, masking the impersonal, prepersonal forces underneath it. And we cover those over. The viewpoint far surpasses a purely physiological conception of life, which a lot of people ascribe to Nietzsche, which is insane. He is not a physicalist by any stretch of the imagination. He's doing almost he's sidestepping that conversation. I would argue. The body itself is, as he says, a product of chance. It's nothing but the locus where a group of individuated impulses confront each other so as to produce this interval that constitutes a human life. The body is where the aleatory point, Deleuze goes over this, the aleatory point happens, where it's constituted through this contingent encounter rather than something that's determined teleologically. Which is, at the time especially, kind of a big deal. But still today, as a thing. Again, this is a product of chance, necessity bringing things together, not destiny. Contingency is the organizing principle, not identity, right? It's not rational design. It's not evolutionary optimization. None of those things.
It's indifferent of measure.
Yeah.
Hegel talked about that in the essence. Part of Nietzsche's accomplishment is that he found the essence of possibility and necessity and the contingency that override. Right? If you read the section on the science of logic, you will find like a lot of resemblance to what Nietzsche talking about, because Nietzsche kind of focuses on essences, right? The essence of these kind of conceptions of life, right? As such, I don't know. Some guy made the point. I don't remember, but I have to kind of work up on my PDF to kind of like search about the presentation that I kind of watched, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll publish it in the Quarantine Collective, which talk about how Nietzsche kind of like mediate between the essences, right? And found the kind of contingency within possibility and within necessity, right? It's kind of making out of ignorance. He make what Hegel kind of like did, right? Like he did that. I mean, Pierre Klossowski put it on point when he said in the beginning that out of ignorance he kind of like moved past Hegel in terms of his logical sequence and logical tautology, right? That's why it signals to me that, right? Mm-hmm. But I will I will publish after we finish. I will publish the presentation.
Cool. Couple other things I want to just hover on for a moment. The phrase in here that he uses, produce this interval that constitutes a human life, impulses whose sole ambition is to de-individuate themselves. There's actually a lot said here that's going to be coming back constantly throughout sort of the rest of the book. But the idea that drives, Freud, libido, drives towards procreation and creation, or death drive towards destruction, the breaking down. Nietzsche, it's not that really. For him, drives operate very differently. They're looking to de-individualize, a disindividuation, you might say, a tendency towards dissolution. But it's specific. It's a dissolution that is opposed to maintenance. Again, it's not procreation for Nietzsche on the other side of dissolution. It's maintenance. The maintenance of the status quo. The will to power is basically going to be this. And it's a big push. It's a creative, destructive as a thing on one side versus conservative maintenance. So creative, destructive is the same to him. It's a very different bipolarity that plays here that is going to become very, very, very important very quickly. And then the other, what we call the waking state is merely the comparison of the two, their reciprocal reflection, like a play of mirrors. Ordinary consciousness is relational, not substantial. There is not a waking state. We tend to talk about it like this. We tend to talk about we are awake versus asleep, but this way we talk about it, again, how the language works, how the category operates, how these things work, plays very, very differently for Nietzsche. The differentiation is really between more or less wakeful conditions. And because of that, these things have reciprocal reflections. Nietzsche has used the phrase, Deleuze loves it. I learned my sickness only through my health only through my sickness. The play of mirrors here is this infinite regression of reflections that do not have actual ground or origin or foundationality themselves. Every moment that you are aware of things is awareness of other moments, not a direct contact with reality. Okay? It's kind of logic of sense more than a little bit. That's right, August. It's more than a little bit. It's coming through. And we will finish here on this next line today, and then we will next week pick up on this line as well. To understand Nietzsche, it is important to see this reversal brought about by the organism. The most fragile organ it has developed comes to dominate the body, one might say, because of its very fragility. I'm not even going to try to explain it. We will next week. This is, if you aren't seeing so many fucking other books that we talk about in that sentence, this is so important to not just understand this book, but these are foundational sentences that worked for Deleuze significantly, and for Artaud as well. This is huge. I really love the phrase. One might say because of its very fragility. I love it. Let me make a note if I can. Doop-a-doo. Boop, 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 draw. Thank you. And I will not make a dick this week. I'm going to try my best not to. And we will say boop, 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 boop. And
Nietzsche remind me of Judge Schreber in some way, right?
There's a lot of parallels to take things from, very much. All right. But with that, thank you, YouTube, for joining. Later tonight, I'm probably going to end up streaming. I put out a call last night for if anyone has a good idea of how, because someone was talking about copyright, now it shouldn't exist, and I gave my take, and I'm still, I'm open. But I want to talk through kind of the realities of what these things function as. So we're not talking about law or policy in terms of like their ideational or how they should work, because that's not what law does or how it operates. And I think it's important to take a Deleuzian take and reading of how the law operates and how it works and how we maybe should be considering.
I want you to do the law. I want you to do the law.
Oh, I'm doing a lot. That's what tonight is.
Yes, I am experiencing the first-hand impact on this, along with the master and slave discourse on the people that do have legal residency here. It's beyond a lot of other people's expectations and then readings. It's not something that you can really get by readings, but I want you to do this one. I look forward to it tonight.
Right. Thank you very much. And LJ, everyone's sending good vibes your way that you're able to continue to figure out how you want to exist and be able to do that. So,
okay.
Much love. But let me finish up. I'll be probably streaming later tonight. And then this weekend, we're going to be doing some No Elephant streams. I'm making progress in being able to maybe voice the process of things, and we'll see what everyone thinks and how everyone knows I'm stupid and how no one should listen to me ever because I'm a terrible human being who doesn't have the right to have a YouTube channel, which is fine. So we'll see if that happens. Who knows? But otherwise, thank you all for supporting. If you want to join us live, you're more than welcome to discord.gg/DGQC. We have a ton of readings. If you didn't hear August talking a little bit, August has a Nietzsche reading. Ben, who you heard, we've got Coldness and Cruelty on Sundays. We got a lot of good readings going on, and that's just two of the many, many, many readings. Every Tuesday and Thursday, you can join us for these. And of course, just to learn about stuff. We have a really good community I'm quite proud of. So feel free to join. If you are up for supporting, I will take anything. I don't mind. Head over to Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. Give a few bucks. It always helps. It always helps. If you can afford a cup of coffee a month, it matters. But with that, let me see who I can send you off to if there's anything happening right now.
It's also Spinoza getting back up in about a week and a half.
Oh, Spinoza's coming back?
Yep.
That'll be good. Are we ethics?
Yeah. Starting on book 2.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to send you off too. We'll send you to Kid Not Kin stream. Becoming is going to be streaming there in a moment. He's doing a marathon. Support him as well, or at least yell at his AI. It's really fun to make his AI say horrifying things for when he comes back from things. I enjoy that. So